What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. Today, we're going to talk about scheme fit and how some of these new players are going to fit the scheme that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to do offensively and defensively. We're going to also talk about some of the players that are currently on the team and maybe perhaps have changed a little bit so that way they're a better fit for the team. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Welcome to the huddle. All right, so the most obvious, glaring scheme fit player I think that has joined the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be Caleb Johnson. He's replacing Najee Harris now. I know there's going to be a lot of questions as far as when does he start to get that workload like Najee Harris had gotten a couple of years back in his rookie season, which was right off the bat. Now, I don't think the Steelers are in the same position as they were when they drafted Najee Harris. They have Jaylen Warren, a back who has shown that he can take the load. He can do everything from running on short, long downs. He can also catch out of the backfield, those type of things. So, the scenario isn't really the same, but I think that they're going to want to use him in a similar fashion. They're going to want to use him as a workload type of running back. That is just who Mike Tomlin is. Even when he had Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams, and both of them were efficient, he didn't play much D'Angelo Williams while Le'Veon Bell was available. I feel that early on we're probably going to see a 50-50 or maybe 60-40, 55-35 or 45, somewhere around there, split between Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson, leaning towards Jaylen in the very beginning. But I think by the time that the year settles down, I think we're going to see more carries out of Caleb Johnson. Not a tremendous amount. I do think it's going to be fairly even, maybe to a slight edge. But here's what Aurthor Smith said when they drafted Caleb Johnson. He says, yes, I'll pivot. Last year we didn't run as much true outside zone. That was due to some of the familiarity with some of the players we had. You try to adapt to the strengths of the players. You don't want to get rigid. We ran a lot less wide zone, outside zone, whatever you want to call it, than I had previous couple of years. I think Caleb can do it. I think it's supposed to say I think Caleb can do it all. He ran plenty of gap schemes at Iowa. You can change it up. Again, you don't want to get stale. He is a really good player, whether you are talking wide zone, tight zone, runner. So without saying too much, he kind of threw Najee Harris a little bit under the bus. Najee wasn't the speedier back. He didn't have that home run ability. He didn't run his 40. He didn't run at the combine. He didn't run at his pro day. And obviously, he just did not have that second gear to get him up and going. Now, I think Najee was an excellent back between the guards, and when he was running forward, I thought he was really good at what he, at being a running back. But I just think that with what the Steelers wanted to do, they wanted somebody who can get to the edge, get to the outside, have the speed and the agility to get up the field as well. And that just wasn't the case there with Najee. And I think that that's why we saw a little bit better out of Jaylen Warren, because he's more of that bowling ball that's going to bounce it out to the outside and have that low center of gravity and hard to tackle, but also at the same time quick enough to get to the outside. And I think that's maybe perhaps why we saw a little bit more success with Jaylen Warren versus Najee Harris. But now you have the fit and the scheme. You have the running back to fit the scheme. I fully anticipate to see the Steelers running a lot more wide zone with Caleb Johnson, and perhaps maybe this will start to loosen up some defenses. As far as, well, that's going to bring in the defenses. And then maybe perhaps, depending on who the quarterback is, if they can take advantage of some key opportunities on the outside, which is going to bring me to my next key fitment guy, which is going to be Roman Wilson. All indications he's gotten bigger, stronger, faster. He's looking really good out there. Now, I know that the Steelers are bringing in Gabe Davis tomorrow. They are no longer, I guess, in the trade talks with Miami about Jonnu Smith. So he's no longer going to be a part of the formula there for the potential team. And so Gabe Davis is coming in. He's off of a meniscus tear injury back in November, I believe. It's a 6-month time frame for those type of recoveries. And the Jacksonville Jaguars released him due to a failed physical designation back in May. So May being the 6-month time frame when you're supposed to be healthy, he failed that. That's why they released him. I don't know. You got to be really, really careful with a guy like Gabe Davis with the injury that he had, given the fact that he was released in the manner that he was. Is there more to it? Was there a setback at some point? You're really going to want to look at the medical and make sure that he's good to go. But Roman Wilson, looking back at what he was able to do at Michigan, he was a guy that was not afraid to go over the middle. He was unafraid to block. He was a 100% effort and character guy, something that you were missing out of George Pickens and something that you would have wished you would have had out of George. Who is still very salty, talking about how he now forced himself out of Pittsburgh. They wanted to keep him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, you're with the Cowboys and they haven't done much either. And, he's not interested in signing an extension, probably because the Cowboys told him flat out, you haven't done anything to deserve one yet. And, they're giving him an opportunity to showcase his skills in a different place and location. But, I highly doubt that the Dallas Cowboys were willing to offer him a contract that he's willing to, or that he was wanting to accept at this point, given the fact that he hasn't done anything for them. But I digress. So what Roman Wilson is able to do is he's got the effort. He's not going to quit. He's not going to be a guy that's not going to run the right route or run a route just because the ball's not going to him. And he's not afraid to block. One of the things that I think a lot of people saw when it came to George Pickens was there were some times where he took some plays off. One of the biggest plays was a blocking play where Jaylen Warren was coming around the side and would have scored a touchdown had George Pickens blocked his guy, but he gave zero effort whatsoever. So seeing and hearing about Roman Wilson and his ability and him coming up is a huge plus for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still think they're going to pick up another wide receiver too, sometime, whether it's Gabe Davis or not. I do think the Steelers are going to make that choice. But, it's good things to hear about Roman Wilson. If he can stay healthy, hopefully he can have that big year too. And essentially, he's another third-round pick that the Steelers really didn't get a chance to use last year, that they now get a chance and an opportunity to see what his skills are like. And as I mentioned with Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington is a guy that I think has shown up this offseason or this OTAs as different as well. He's lost some weight. He wants to be more involved in the passing game. And, I think that the Steelers going out and talking to other tight ends and then seeing him, maybe the reason why they're no longer talking to other tight ends could be because of the work he's done in the offseason, and I hope it continues. He's a beast of a man. Obviously, a couple of years back when he got drafted, he was only out there for blocking situations. He was never really a target until Mason Rudolph got into the game. Last year, he became more of a target. I really hope that this year the Steelers really use him more. When it comes to Aurthor Smith and the scheme and the fit that he likes, he uses his tight ends and he uses multiple tight ends. And the way that Darnell Washington blocks, it's essential that he can go out there and catch as well, because you don't want to become too predictable that, all right, we got the blocking tight end in, they're going to run the ball. Now, he has all the freakish abilities to be able to go out there, catch the ball. He has the speed, agility, the broad jump, the whole 9 yards. And so to see him losing some weight and potentially be more involved in the passing game, I think could be massive. I've said it before, you have some very tall, big guys on this team, some basketball players, and DK Metcalf, Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth. You throw in out there Caleb Johnson, who's not that small of a guy either. And, if these guys can catch the ball, you can bring them in if the defense wants to go small and try to defend the pass, or you can spread them out if they want to try to defend the run and bring in the bigger guys and see how they do in space. I think Darnell Washington can be a huge asset for this team this upcoming year, and I'm for one all for it. I mean, the guy is hard to get down on the ground. If he's catching the ball, most likely he's going to be in the secondary, so he's going to be away from those bigger guys, which, given his size, speed, and agility, is a huge advantage for him. And I just would like to see more of that this year. And finally, sticking with Georgia guys, Broderick Jones, he's lost some weight. He's now finally on the left side where he was probably more comfortable with. I think that last year, him on the right side, Dan Moore on the left side, he showed some frustration. He got into it a couple of times with people over Twitter and stuff like that. And The Steelers have been kind of stubborn to want to put players in positions that maybe they're not familiar with. Something like, we've talked about, oh God, what was his name? Dotson, who became an all-pro out there with Los Angeles. They worked with his strengths, and he was able to do those, and be a factor for those guys. He could have definitely been useful for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember his first year. There were some incidences where I believe it was the catcher went down with an injury, and he got to play a little bit on the right side, and he looked good. And then they wanted to play him on the left, or it was vice versa. But I digress. So putting Broderick on the left side where he's more comfortable with, he's lost weight, he looks better. He's going to be able to transition and move back and forth, be able to potentially even pull at a better degree than what he did last year, being a better fit for the scheme. And so especially if you're going to be running to the outside on wide zone runs, you want to be able to have outside tackles that have good feet and that can move. And him losing some weight, still being above 300 pounds, but down to where he was when he kind of came in from college, where he ran, I think, one of the fastest, if not the fastest 40 time for a tackle at the combine. That's all good for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, and what they're going to be able to do on the ground. And so just to kind of wrap this all in a bow here, on the offensive side, I think that the scheme fit that they have gone for, trying to get players that are going to fit schematically and personally and emotionally and psychologically, like when you talk about George Pickens and not wanting to be there and those type of things with Roman Wilson now. I'm just saying that I think that there's a good opportunity to see a much more potent, more consistent, and I think that's probably the important aspect, the more consistent offense, because of the players that they now have and the weight loss and the fit that they now fit into. Tomorrow, unless there's some breaking news, I'm going to go over the scheme fit or the players that are on the defensive side, because there's some players who are returning, some players who are new, and also some players that are returning from health that have changed their bodies and maybe perhaps are in a better position to better help the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So you don't want to miss it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Let me know in the comment section what do you think, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time, peace.